My name is Clara Reed. For most of my 38 years, I have considered myself a person of quiet currents, like the Willamette River that flows through the heart of my city, Port Blossom. I've always found a certain peace in its steady, unassuming journey to the sea. My life with my husband, Leo, has been much the same, a comfortable rhythm built on shared cups of tea, long walks in the mist-shrouded forests of Forest Park, and the gentle understanding that comes from a decade of marriage. For the past 3 years, that quiet current had been directed into a single, powerful channel, my work at Sterling and Sons Imports. It wasn't just any company, it was Leo's family business, run by his father, Walter Sterling, a man carved from the same old-growth timber as the city's historic buildings, sturdy, imposing, and resistant to change. I was the senior operations manager, a title I had earned not through nepotism, but through relentless effort. I had streamlined their archaic logistics, nurtured their most important client relationships, and quietly expanded our departmental team from a handful of overworked clerks to a thriving unit of 25 skilled professionals. Walter had promised me the promotion. Not in writing, of course. Walter was a man of handshakes and pronouncements, but his words had been as solid as the mahogany desk that dominated his office. Clara, he'd said 3 months prior, his voice a low rumble, the new regional director position is yours. You've more than earned it. We'll make the official announcement at the end of the quarter. That promise became my North Star. It justified the evenings I spent at the office long after the city lights had begun to sparkle on the river below, the weekend plans I'd sacrificed to soothe a panicked client, the mental and emotional energy I poured into a company that was, in a way, my own. It wasn't just a title, it was validation. It was the moment my quiet current would finally be acknowledged as a force of nature. The day of the announcement arrived, not with a bang, but with the gentle clinking of porcelain. Walter had called a senior staff meeting in the main conference room, a stuffy space with heavy velvet curtains and an oil portrait of his own father glaring down from the wall. A catered afternoon tea was spread across the sideboard, scones, miniature sandwiches, and a silver urn of Earl Grey. It all felt terribly civilized, a placid surface belying the churning anticipation in my chest. I took my seat beside Leo's cousin, Chloe. She had joined the company 8 weeks ago, fresh from a postgraduate program in London. She was bright, earnest, and carried the easy confidence of someone who had never had to fight for her place in the world. I'd spent those 8 weeks patiently mentoring her, walking her through our systems, explaining the nuances of client relationships I'd spent years cultivating. Walter tapped his teaspoon against his cup, a sound that silenced the room. He beamed, his silver hair catching the afternoon light. Thank you all for joining me. As you know, Sterling and Sons is entering a new era of growth, and with that comes a need for new leadership. My hands rested in my lap, my fingers laced together so tightly the knuckles were white. I could feel my heart beating a steady, expectant rhythm against my ribs. This was it. It is with immense pride, Walter continued, his gaze sweeping across the table, that I announce our new regional director. He paused for dramatic effect, his eyes twinkling. My brilliant niece, Chloe Sterling. The world went silent. The polite applause that filled the room sounded distant, like rain on a faraway roof. I watched, as if from a great height, as everyone turned to congratulate a blushing, surprised Chloe. 8 weeks. She had been here for 8 weeks. The scones on my plate suddenly looked like lumps of clay. I felt a nudge and looked up. Everyone was looking at me, their expressions a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I unfroze my hands and brought them together in a slow, measured clap. The sound felt alien, a betrayal of the screaming silence inside me. Walter's eyes met mine across the table. I saw no guilt, only a kind of resolute paternalism. Clara has been a tremendous mentor to Chloe, he announced, his voice booming with false warmth. I know she will continue to offer her invaluable support as Chloe transitions into this vital role. Support. The word landed like a stone in my gut. 3 years of my life, my dedication, my expertise, all reduced to a supporting role in someone else's story. Chloe stood, smoothing down her impeccably tailored dress. Thank you, Uncle Walter. And thank you, Clara. I have so much to learn from you. I'm truly looking forward to it. Learn from me. The phrase echoed in my mind. She would learn from me how to do the job that should have been mine. The corporate jargon, the polite smiles, the clinking teacups, it was all a beautifully orchestrated performance of my own erasure. The meeting concluded with more congratulations for Chloe. People filed past my chair, some offering a sympathetic squeeze of the shoulder, others carefully avoiding my gaze. Helen, from our accounting department, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, leaned in close. "That was a load of rubbish, Clara," she whispered. "You deserved that." I managed a tight-lipped smile and retreated to the sanctuary of my office. The brass nameplate on the door read, "Clara Reed, Senior Operations Manager." It felt like a lie. I sank into my chair and stared at the framed certificates on my wall, Employee of the Month, 3 of them, a testament to my consistent and, apparently, undervalued performance. My phone buzzed. It was Leo. "How did it go? Director Reed?" My fingers trembled as I typed back. "We'll talk tonight." The rest of the afternoon was a study in forced normalcy. I answered emails with practiced efficiency. I reviewed shipping manifests. I sat in on a planning call, my voice even and professional, while colleagues shot me furtive, sorrowful glances. The smile on my face felt like a mask I was holding up with both hands, and my jaw ached from the effort. Just as I was packing my bag to leave, Walter appeared in my doorway. His large frame seemed to fill the space, blocking out the light from the hallway. "Clara." "A moment." "Of course." I gestured to the guest chair, the very same one he'd sat in when he made his promise. He settled himself, his expression one of weary benevolence. "I know today was difficult." I met his gaze, my voice betraying nothing. "Was it?" "Look," he sighed, "you are incredibly important to this company. Chloe is going to need a strong hand to guide her. I was hoping you'd consider taking on a senior advisory role, alongside your current duties." "To train her," I said, the words flat and devoid of emotion. "To help her succeed," he corrected smoothly. "We both know what this department owes to you. You're the foundation." He was my father-in-law. I had sat at his dinner table for holidays, celebrated his birthdays, and respected him as the patriarch of the family I had married into. But in that moment, watching him try to rebrand this profound betrayal as some sort of honor, a cold clarity washed over me. The quiet current inside me had hit a dam. "Walter, may I ask you something?" "Anything." 3 months ago, you told me the promotion was mine. You said I'd earned it. What changed?" He shifted in his chair, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "Business priorities shift, Clara. Chloe brings a fresh energy. A new perspective from her studies abroad. 8 weeks of fresh energy versus 3 years of results," I stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "You're taking this too personally." A dry, humorless laugh almost escaped me. "This is my career, Walter. My professional life. How else am I supposed to take it?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your family, Clara. Family helps each other. Chloe needed this start. You're established here. You're secure. You don't need the title the way she does." And there it was. The unvarnished truth. Being family meant I was expected to be the stable bedrock upon which others could build their ambitions. My security was a given, my loyalty assumed, my own aspirations secondary to the needs of the bloodline. I was dependable Clara, the one who would always understand, always accommodate, always put the family first. "I see," I said, my voice eerily calm. I stood and gathered my coat and bag. "Well, I should be getting home. Leo is making his mushroom risotto tonight." Walter looked visibly relieved at the change of subject. Wonderful. Give my son my love. And Clara, thank you for your understanding." I nodded once and walked out of the office, my sensible heels clicking on the polished floors. Understanding. He called it understanding. I called it being asked to witness my own professional burial with a polite smile. The drive home along the winding roads that hugged the river was a blur. The familiar green of the pines seemed darker, the gray sky heavier. Walter's words echoed in my head. Family helps each other. But the help only ever seemed to flow in one direction. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the lights of our small craftsman bungalow glowed with a warm, inviting light. For the first time, home didn't feel like a sanctuary. It felt like another place where I was inextricably tied to the man who had just dismantled my future. I sat in the car for a long time, watching the evening mist roll in from the hills. Tomorrow, I would have to go back into that office. I would have to sit across from Chloe and patiently pour my hard-won knowledge into her, all while my own dreams dissolved like sugar in tea. But not tonight. Tonight, I would just sit here, in the quiet darkness, and let the full, crushing weight of it all settle in. The quiet current inside me was no longer flowing. It was gathering, building pressure behind the dam, and I had no idea what would happen when it finally broke. When I walked inside, the earthy scent of mushrooms and parmesan filled the air. Leo stood at the stove, stirring the risotto, a picture of domestic peace that felt worlds away from the turmoil inside me. He took one look at my face, and his smile faltered. "Clara? What's wrong?" He turned off the heat and led me to a stool at the kitchen island. "Sit. Tell me." And so I did. I recounted the whole afternoon, my voice low and steady, from the clinking teacups to Chloe's appointment, to Walter's patronizing explanation in his office. With each word, I watched Leo's expression harden. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by a stormy anger I rarely saw. "He actually said you were secure and didn't need it?" Leo's voice was tight. His exact words. He pushed away from the counter, running a hand through his hair. "I'm calling him." No, I reached out and caught his wrist, my grip surprisingly firm. "Don't, Leo. Please. This isn't your battle to fight. He's my father, Clara. He disrespected you. He disrespected our life, everything you've worked for. And it's my work, my career, and my self-respect on the line," I said, my voice gaining a strength I didn't know it possessed. "If I let you fight this for me, I'm just proving his point, that I'm just an extension of the family, not a professional in my own right. I have to handle this." He looked at me, his anger warring with his instinct to protect me. Finally, he sighed and sank onto the stool beside me, pulling me into a hug. The risotto sat forgotten on the stove. Another small casualty in the fallout of Walter's decision. The next morning, I walked into Sterling and Sons wearing a metaphorical suit of armor. I was polite, professional, and utterly detached. At 9 o'clock sharp, Chloe bounced into my office, a brand-new leather-bound notebook in her hand. "Ready for my first lesson, Professor?" she chirped, her cheerfulness grating on my raw nerves. I gestured to the chair. "Let's begin with the Finchwood Artisans account. They're our most delicate and most valuable client. Mr. Finch values personal connection above all else." For 2 hours, I laid out the intricate tapestry of the relationship I had built with Alastair Finch. I explained his preference for phone calls over emails, his disdain for corporate jargon, and the careful dance of logistics required to get his handcrafted furniture from European workshops to his galleries without a single scratch. Chloe scribbled furiously, her questions revealing a profound lack of basic business acumen. "So, if a shipment is delayed by customs in Rotterdam, what's the first thing I do?" she asked, chewing on the end of her pen. "You call Mr. Finch personally, before he hears it from the shipping agent. You explain the situation clearly, you tell him exactly what steps you are taking to resolve it, and you give him a conservative estimate for the new delivery date. You absorb his frustration, and you assure him that you have it under control. But what if I don't have it under control?" I paused, looking at her bright, uncreased face. "Then you figure it out, Chloe. Because Finchwood Artisans accounts for nearly a quarter of our revenue. If we lose them, people in this building lose their jobs. You, me, Helen in accounting." The color drained from her face. Oh. By lunchtime, I felt hollowed out. I was essentially creating a manual on how to be me, handing over years of experience and intuition like a set of keys. I was in the break room, staring blankly at the microwave as it heated my leftover soup, when I heard voices from Walter's office next door. The walls were old, and his booming voice was impossible to ignore. "The transition is seamless," Walter was saying. "Chloe is a natural. She's soaking it all up. Are you sure Clara is okay with this?" That was Chloe's voice, tentative and younger. I froze, my hand hovering over the microwave's stop button. I leaned closer to the wall, the soup forgotten. Clara is dependable, Walter said, his tone dismissive. But she lacks vision. We need fresh ideas, Chloe. You're the future of this company. She's excellent at maintaining the status quo, but we need to innovate. My blood ran cold. But she knows so much, Chloe pressed. Mr. Finch asked for her specifically this morning. Walter chuckled, a low, condescending sound that made my stomach clench. That's the problem. She's become a crutch. Our clients are too comfortable with her. We need to shake things up, get them used to a new way of doing things. Someone who will challenge them, not just placate them. A crutch. Too comfortable. The relationships I had painstakingly built, the trust one had earned, were being framed as liabilities. I just feel bad, Chloe murmured. She's been so gracious about all this, but I can tell she's hurt. That's your good heart talking, Walter said soothingly. But business isn't about feelings. Clara will adapt. She always does. That's her value to us. She's predictable, reliable. And frankly, where else would she go? She's nearly 40. Companies want young blood. We're doing her a favor by keeping her secure. Predictable. Reliable. No other options. Nearly 40. I grabbed my soup and walked back to my office on legs that felt like they might give way. My hands were shaking, not with sadness, but with a cold, clear rage. It wasn't a hot, fleeting anger, but a deep, tectonic fury that shifted the very foundations of my world. For 3 years, I had believed I was a valued partner in building this company. I thought my loyalty meant something. But I was just the caretaker, the placeholder, the reliable manager keeping the shop in order until the true heir was ready to take her throne. Walter didn't see a partner. He saw a functionary. A predictable, reliable cog with nowhere else to go. And the most devastating part? He wasn't entirely wrong. I had been predictable. I had swallowed every small slight, rationalized every broken promise, and smiled through every instance of being overlooked, all in the belief that my steadfastness would be rewarded. Sitting at my desk, staring at my meaningless certificates, his words echoed around me. But they no longer sounded like a judgment. They sounded like a challenge. The woman who had walked into this building this morning, the one who craved Walter's approval, was gone. In her place was someone else, someone forged in the fire of that casual, cruel conversation. That afternoon, I continued to train Chloe with the same outward calm. But inside, every piece of advice I gave, every client insight I shared, was no longer a gift. It was an invoice. I was meticulously cataloging my own value, not for Walter, but for myself. That evening, with Leo out at a client dinner, I sat at our small wooden dining table. The rain whispered against the window panes. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow illuminating my determined face. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for only a moment before they began to move with a newfound purpose. Dear Walter, please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my position as Senior Operations Manager at Sterling and Sons Imports. My final day of employment will be in 2 weeks, on Friday, November 18th. I want to thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the company over the past 3 years. I have learned a great deal, and I wish Sterling and Sons continued success. Sincerely, Clara Reed. I read it over. It was short, professional, and utterly final. There was no anger, no accusation. Just a clean, quiet severing of a tie that had become a noose. I printed it, signed it with a steady hand, and slid it into a crisp envelope. Then, for the first time in weeks, I went to bed and slept soundly, the quiet current inside me no longer dammed up, but carving a new, unknown path toward the sea. The next morning, I dressed with intention. A sharp, charcoal gray suit I reserved for important meetings. My grandmother's silver locket, a small, solid weight against my chest. I arrived at the office before anyone else and placed the white envelope squarely in the middle of my desk. A silent sentinel. At 10 o'clock, I picked it up and walked to Walter's office. His longtime secretary, Marie, gave me a warm smile. Morning, Clara. He's on a call, but you can go on in. I entered and sat in the chair opposite his grand desk, waiting patiently as he barked orders about a shipping container into his phone. When he finally hung up, he looked at me, his brow furrowed with impatience. Yes, Clara? I'm swamped today. I slid the envelope across the polished mahogany. He glanced at it, then at me. What's this? My resignation. He ripped it open. I watched the color drain from his face, replaced by a blotchy rising red. He shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You can't be serious, he sputtered, the letter trembling in his hand. This is some kind of tactic. A play for more money because of the promotion. I remained seated, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I am completely serious, Walter. But Chloe needs you. The Finchwood account. You can't just walk out. This is irresponsible. I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice, I said, my voice level. That's standard professional courtesy. I'm sure Chloe is a fast learner. You said so yourself. He began to pace, a caged lion in his own luxurious prison. This is about the promotion, isn't it? I know you're disappointed. We can create a new title for you. Vice President of Client Relations. Something with more prestige. Walter, stop. The words were quiet, but they cut through his blustering. He froze. This isn't about a title anymore. It's about being seen as a person whose contributions are valuable on their own merit, not as a reliable fixture that can be taken for granted. I stood up, smoothing the front of my jacket. You see me as predictable. As someone with no other options. I've decided to become a little less predictable. His face went pale. You heard that conversation. It wasn't a question. The air crackled with the weight of his words, now hanging between us. He sank back into his chair, looking, for the first time, like an old man. Clara, please. Let's be rational. You misunderstood. I understood perfectly, I said, walking to the door. I paused with my hand on the brass knob. You were right about one thing. I was doing you a favor by staying. My last day is the 18th. I'll spend the next 2 weeks preparing a comprehensive transition document for Chloe. What do you want, Clara? He asked, his voice desperate. A bigger salary? A corner office? Just name it. I turned to look at him one last time. I want to work somewhere I'm not considered a crutch. I want to be seen as the future, not a relic of the past. And I want to find out what a woman who is nearly 40 is truly capable of. I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. Marie looked up, her face etched with concern. Everything all right, dear? I smiled at her, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. Everything, I said, is finally perfect. Back at my desk, my phone began to ring. It was Helen from accounting. Is it true? She whispered. It is, I said. The news was already spreading like wildfire. The next 2 weeks would be a storm of gossip, frantic questions, and probably more pleading from Walter. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't weathering a storm. I was the storm. And I was finally moving in my own direction. The call came on a gray Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after my last day at Sterling & Sons. I was in my home office, surrounded by stacks of books on modern logistics and a half-finished cup of tea, trying to map out my next chapter. The number on my screen was unfamiliar. Clara Reed speaking. Ms. Reed, this is Marcus Thorne from Vivid Coast Logistics. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I sat up straighter. Vivid Coast was the rising star of the Pacific Northwest's shipping industry, a tech-driven, innovative company that was making waves for its efficiency and progressive culture. Not at all, Mr. Thorne. How can I help you? Please call me Marcus. I'm calling on a recommendation from Alistair Finch of Finchwood Artisans. He was rather insistent that I get in touch with you. He said, and I quote, "You need to hire her before someone else does." A warmth spread through my chest. Alistair Finch. The client I had nurtured, whose trust one had earned through meticulous care, had advocated for me. That's very kind of him, I said, my voice steady despite the sudden leap in my pulse. He wasn't just being kind. He was being pragmatic, Marcus said with a chuckle. We have an opening for a director of client strategy. It's a new role, designed to build and maintain our key partnerships as we scale. Alistair seems to believe you wrote the book on that. Would you be open to a conversation? I would be very interested. The interview process at Vivid Coast was like stepping into another dimension. Their office wasn't a maze of dark wood and heavy doors, but an open-plan space flooded with natural light, with living walls of moss and ferns and a palpable buzz of collaborative energy. There were no patronizing pronouncements, only direct questions and engaged, intelligent discussion. In my final interview with Marcus, a man my own age with sharp, insightful eyes, he asked the question I'd been rehearsing. Why did you leave a family business after such a successful tenure? I looked at him, and the carefully crafted corporate answer I'd prepared dissolved. I decided on the truth. I realized that my loyalty was being mistaken for a lack of ambition. I reached a point where staying would have meant agreeing to a much smaller version of myself than I was willing to be. Marcus nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. We don't believe in small versions of people here, Clara. We believe in giving talented people the resources and runway to become the biggest, most effective versions of themselves. Does that sound like a place you could thrive? It sounds, I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face, like exactly what I've been looking for. 3 days later, I had an offer in hand that not only matched the director-level salary I'd been denied, but exceeded it. The title was Director of Client Strategy. It wasn't a hand-me-down or a consolation prize. It was a role created around a skill set they actively sought and valued. My first day at Vivid Coast felt like my first breath of clean, fresh air after years in a stuffy room. My team was a mix of bright, eager young talent and seasoned professionals. They didn't see me as a crutch or a caretaker, they saw me as a leader. My experience wasn't a liability, it was an asset. Within my first month, I was tasked with salvaging their most difficult account, a tech firm that was notoriously demanding. I used the same methods I had with Alistair Finch: deep listening, proactive communication, and a relentless focus on solutions. After a 3-hour strategy session, we not only retained their business, but expanded our contract with them. My team lead, a young man named Ben, looked at me with awe. How did you do that? They've been threatening to walk for 6 months. I listened to what they were afraid of, not just what they were angry about, I explained. And then I showed them we were the safest pair of hands for their business. Word of the wind traveled quickly. Marcus started including me in executive-level planning meetings. My ideas weren't just heard, they were debated, refined, and often implemented. I was building something new, from the ground up, with a team that respected me and a leadership that empowered me. I was thriving. About 4 months into my new role, the ripples from my departure from Sterling and Sons began to reach my new shore. It started with a call from Alistair Finch. Clara, my dear, I hope you're well. I'm calling with some news. We'll be terminating our contract with Sterling and Sons at the end of the month. My heart sank a little. Oh, Alistair, I'm so sorry to hear that. Don't be, he said gruffly. It was a business decision. Your replacement, the young niece, she missed 2 of our scheduled check-in calls. When a critical shipment was held up in customs, she sent me a standardized email directing me to a tracking portal. You, Clara, would have been on the phone with me at dawn, already having spoken to the port authorities. He sighed. I tried to speak to Walter about it. He told me I needed to adapt to their new, more streamlined communication style. So, I've adapted. I'm streamlining them out of my business. He paused. By the way, our logistics needs are now up for bid. I trust Vivid Coast will be submitting a proposal. That was only the beginning. Over the next 2 months, 2 other major clients quietly left Sterling and Sons, both citing a dramatic decline in service and a lack of personal attention. Both ended up signing with Vivid Coast, with me leading the charge. I never once badmouthed my former employer. I didn't have to. I just showed them what competent, attentive leadership looked like. The most difficult call came one evening from Helen, the accountant. Her voice was strained. Clara, there are layoffs coming. Big ones. Losing the Finchwood account was a cannonball to the hull. People are scared. She hesitated. They're blaming Chloe, but mostly, they're talking about what a mistake Walter made in letting you go. I never wanted this to happen, Helen, I said softly, the weight of unintended consequences settling on me. I know you didn't, she said. You just knew your worth. That's not a crime. She cleared her throat. Speaking of which, are you folks at Vivid Coast by any chance looking for a senior accountant with 20 years of experience who is about to be made redundant? Send me your resume tonight, Helen, I said without a second's hesitation. 6 months after I'd walked out of Walter's office, an invitation arrived. Thick, cream-colored cardstock, elegantly embossed. Walter Sterling requests the pleasure of your company at the Sterling and Sons Annual Excellence Awards dinner. Leo looked over my shoulder as I stared at it. You're not actually going to go, are you? I think I have to, I said, a strange sense of calm settling over me. But I'm not going as the person who left. I'm going as the person I've become. Walking into that hotel ballroom was surreal. I wore a deep sapphire blue dress that made me feel like the evening sky. Marcus, ever the supportive boss, had insisted on coming as my plus one. I saw my old colleagues. Some offered warm, genuine smiles. Others gave me hesitant nods. I saw Chloe at the family table, looking overwhelmed and unhappy. And then Walter took the stage. He looked smaller. The booming confidence had been replaced by a weary gravity. He spoke of a challenging year and lessons learned. Then he came to the final award. This year, we are introducing a new award, he announced, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. The Sterling Legacy Award for Leadership. It recognizes an individual whose impact transcends their time at the company, whose standards of excellence continue to guide us. This year, the award goes to Clara Reed. A polite, slightly stunned applause filled the room. Marcus gave my arm a squeeze. Go on, he whispered. This is yours. I walked to the stage, my steps even and sure. Walter handed me a heavy crystal obelisk. He leaned into the microphone. We were fools to let you go, Clara. We know that now. I took the microphone, my heart beating a strong, steady rhythm. I looked out at the familiar faces. Thank you, Walter, I began, my voice clear and carrying across the silent room. My time at Sterling and Sons taught me the most valuable lesson of my career, that knowing your own worth is not arrogance. It is a prerequisite for success. And when you are in a place that does not recognize that worth, you must be brave enough to create a new place for yourself. I paused, letting the words settle. I learned that loyalty must be reciprocal. That experience should be revered, not dismissed. And that sometimes, walking away is the most powerful statement of leadership you can make. I am grateful for my journey here, because it led me to where I am now, a place where my contributions are celebrated, my potential is limitless, and my age is seen as a source of wisdom, not a liability. I placed the microphone back on the lectern. I didn't look at Walter. I looked at Helen, who was beaming and had started a round of applause that was quickly joined by Alistair Finch, who had come as Helen's guest, and many others. Later, as Marcus and I were leaving, Walter approached me, his face a mixture of regret and desperation. Clara, we're restructuring. The director position, it's open again. It's yours. Name your price. I looked at the man who had so casually dismissed me, who had broken my professional heart, and I felt nothing but a quiet, gentle pity. Thank you, Walter, I said, and I meant it. But I'm no longer for sale. I'm not building a career anymore. I'm building my own legacy. As I walked out of the ballroom and into the cool Port Blossom night, the Crystal Award felt heavy in my hand. It wasn't a trophy from him. It was a relic from a past life. The real prize wasn't the award, or the apology, or the vindication. It was the woman I had become in order to earn it, a woman whose quiet current had finally found the open sea. And she was just getting started.